Many years ago, when the gods chose to live among humans to experience life's wonders, they discovered their own divine power. They then established families, bearing their names, and bestowed upon their members the essential strength required to bravely combat fearsome monsters. Bel was the only member of the family led by the unknown goddess Hestia, and at that moment he was being pursued by a minotaur. Just as the monster was about to kill him, Bel was unexpectedly saved by a beautiful girl named Ice, with whom he secretly began to fall in love. Upon exiting the dungeon, Bel rushed to the guild to ask his advisor, Ina, for information about Ice. He soon learned that she was the strongest swordswoman in the Loki Familia, widely known by the distinguished title of the Sword Princess. Even though he knew a rookie like himself had very little chance with Ice, Ina encouraged him, saying that if he grew stronger, he might just capture her attention. Upon arriving home, Bel was greeted with a warm, comforting hug, and then the two of them settled down to enjoy the delicious potato fries she had brought along. While they ate, Hestia complained that no one wanted to join the family of an unknown goddess like herself, though she immediately thought that perhaps it was better if it was just the two of them. Afterward, as usual, Hestia checked Bel's status and discovered he had gained a new ability, capable of making him grow extraordinarily based on his emotions. Upon reviewing his status sheet, Bel noticed that nearly all his stats had increased, except for magic, which remained at 0. Further down, Bel observed a strange trace in the skills section, so he asked Hestia, but she didn't want him to know about his new ability, saying it was her mistake, which left him somewhat disappointed. The next morning, Bel awoke to find Seer lying on top of him, making him so incredibly nervous that he immediately bolted out of the room. Later, on his way to the dungeon, Bel sensed that someone was following him, but when he turned around, he saw absolutely no one there. Just then, a girl named Seer approached him to return a magic stone he had dropped, and she invited him to dinner that evening at the tavern where she worked. Shortly after, deep inside the dungeon, while Bel was fighting to collect magic stones as he always did, he unexpectedly encountered a large, numerous pack of monsters. Instinctively, he wanted to flee, but the image of Ice flashed through his mind, and that instantly stripped away all his fear, causing him to immediately launch himself into combat. That night, Bel felt immensely happy upon seeing that his statistics had increased in a truly surprising and remarkable way. But Hestia didn't share that joy, because she knew very well that the faster Bel developed, the stronger his feelings for Ice became. Following what was agreed that morning, Bel went to the tavern where Seer worked for dinner, and immediately felt a pang in his chest upon seeing how expensive the dishes were. Just at that moment, the members of the Loki Familia entered the place, attracting the attention of all the adventurers present, while Bel remained completely absorbed in the beauty of Ice. Everything seemed to be going well until Beat, a werewolf, began to mock them, recalling how the Loki Familia had allowed a minotaur to escape on the 5th floor, which caused a rookie to get so scared that he wet himself, and Ice had to intervene to save him. Although Ice later came to Bel's defense, he felt profoundly humiliated and ran off towards the dungeon, where he fought throughout the entire night. The next morning, Bel returned home covered in blood, but even so, he managed to smile and tell Hestia that he truly wanted to become much stronger. Inside the house, Hestia was utterly astonished to discover that Bel's power was increasing at an absolutely terrifying rate, which compelled her to seriously reconsider the true, immense potential of the new ability he had recently acquired. At the same time, she decided that she couldn't let other gods know, so she chose to inform him of his stats only verbally. After giving him the results, Hestia assured him she'd support him with all her strength to make him stronger, but made him promise he'd never leave her alone. After receiving that promise, Hestia felt a sense of relief and mentioned to him that she would soon have to be away from home for a few days. On his way to the dungeon, Bel stopped by the tavern to pay for the previous night's dinner. Upon seeing him arrive, Seer handed him a bento box and, blushing deeply, quickly ran off. That very same night, at a grand party for the gods, Hestia was busily occupied, taking full advantage of all the free food, when the goddesses Freya and Loki suddenly appeared, seemingly just to annoy her. Seizing the opportunity, Hestia asked Loki if Ice had a boyfriend, to which Loki retorted that Ice belonged to her, and anyone who dared approach her would end up in pieces. Immediately, a fierce, intense fight erupted between the small, voluptuous Hestia and the flat-chested Loki, causing great excitement among the gods present. Finally, though with cheeks sore and red from the pinching, Hestia seemed to have emerged victorious. Just then, the goddess of the forge, Hephaestus, arrived, and Hestia, overcome with excitement, lunged towards her, which startled Hephaestus, who hastily clarified that she would not be lending her any money. The truth, however, was that Hestia merely wanted to ask Hephaestus to forge a weapon for Bel. At first, Hephaestus refused, explaining that her family's weapons were incredibly expensive and could not be crafted for free. But upon perceiving Hestia's unwavering determination and passionate resolve, she agreed to undertake that unprofitable work, on the condition that Hestia would assist her throughout the entire creation process. After a long night of diligent work, the special dagger was finally completed, and Hestia, brimming with overwhelming emotion, quickly took it and rushed out, eagerly searching for Bel. Meanwhile, Bel was at the tavern when waitresses Ryu and Anya asked him to take an item that Seer had lost during her work to the Monsterphilia festival. Bell had never heard of this event before, so he inquired, and they explained that it was an annual activity organized by the Ganesha Familia, where the ability to tame monsters was showcased before a large crowd. Shortly after, Bell arrived at the festival, where he met Hestia, who promptly dragged him along to stroll with her. At that very moment, Freya burst into the arena, releasing a group of monsters from the Ganesha Familia, and used her power to specifically control a silver ape, which she directed straight towards Hestia. Seeing the beast suddenly appear, Bell grabbed Hestia's hand and started to run, but they had barely gone a few streets when they were caught. Overcoming his fear, Bell drew his weapon and bravely launched into an attack, but the dagger he held instantly shattered into pieces. Fortunately, he still carried a smoke bomb with him, which he quickly used to blind the ape and escape alongside Hestia. Realizing that they couldn't escape at that speed, Bell made the difficult decision to hide Hestia in a narrow passageway so he could distract the monster alone. He then recalled his past. When his grandfather was attacked by a monster and fell into an abyss, Bell swore to become an adventurer. However, due to his weak appearance, many families had rejected him, and only Hestia extended her hand and took him in, which is why he had to protect her at all costs. Meanwhile, the Ganesha Familia members discovered that the monster had escaped, and aware of the gravity of the situation, their god decided to request reinforcements from other deities. Not far away, Freya observed everything with a cunning, knowing smile. In the city, Aina was discussing the Ganesha Familia's problem with guild members, just as Ais and Loki happened to pass by and overheard the entire situation. Ais didn't hesitate to intervene, determined to save the people and exterminate the unleashed beasts. As for Bell, after a long time of desperately fleeing, he was finally cornered against a wall by the relentless silver ape. Just when he thought he was about to die, Isis suddenly appeared to draw the monster's attention away. Bell didn't understand why she had returned, but with no time to think, he ran to embrace her and plunged down some stairs with her, narrowly avoiding the beast's attack. The ape, however, caught up to them again, and Bell had to once more carry Hestia and continue running. Even in that desperate situation, Hestia didn't hesitate to confess how truly happy she felt deep inside. Taking refuge in a narrow alleyway, she announced that she would elevate Bell's power to defeat the ape, handing him the very dagger she had commissioned that same morning. According to Hephaestus, that weapon was absolutely perfect for novice adventurers like Bell, as its power would grow in tandem with that of its wielder. Just as Bell finished adjusting his statistics, the silver ape found them once again. Bell immediately brandished the new weapon and launched into an attack. This time, the dagger in his hand did not disappoint him. Not only did it not break like the previous ones, but it also displayed astonishing sharpness, easily cutting through the silver ape's tough shell, which allowed Bell to finish off the giant monster with a deadly thrust. As soon as the beast fell to the ground, people emerged from their homes and applauded enthusiastically, and at that very moment, Ais was also present. Suddenly, Hestia fainted from sheer exhaustion, so Bell had to carry her to Mamma Mia's tavern so she could rest and recover. There, Bell and Seer discussed who was to blame, both thinking they had caused trouble for the other. Then, Seer surprised Bell by confessing her feelings to him. Just at that moment, Hestia woke up and called Bell into the room. After confirming that she was alright, Bell asked her about the origin of the black dagger with Hephaestus' name engraved upon it. Upon learning the truth, Bell was profoundly moved by everything Hestia had done for him, to the point of breaking down in tears and embracing her tightly. The next day, when Aina learned that Bell planned to descend to the 7th floor of the dungeon, she immediately objected, recalling that he had almost lost his life on the 5th floor last time. However, after reviewing his updated statistics, she had no choice but to change her mind. Even so, she considered the armor Bell was currently using to be far too weak. Therefore, she arranged to meet him the following day with the intention of going shopping for much better equipment. Upon meeting, both of them went to Babel Tower, a place resembling a grand shopping mall built directly above the dungeon. Aina commented that she intended to buy armor at the Hephaestus Familia's shop, which made Bell hesitate, as he knew their products were incredibly expensive. Nevertheless, she dragged him there anyway, determined to proceed. The place she took him to was a shop that displayed equipment crafted by apprentices of the Hephaestus Familia, so the prices were much more accessible, and one could even find some truly high-quality pieces. In the exhibition area, Bell was captivated by a lightweight armor made by a young blacksmith named Welf Krozo, and he decided to purchase it without hesitation. Knowing that Bell would be entering the 7th floor the next day, Aina advised him to hire an assistant, and as they left, she gave him a glove, hoping it would protect him. On his way back, Bell witnessed an adventurer mistreating his assistant and decided to intervene. The man also tried to hit Bell, but Ryu suddenly appeared and with her presence alone managed to make him back off. While Bell was thanking her for the help, the young woman quickly departed. The next day, Bell put on his new armor and, filled with enthusiasm, headed to the dungeon. On the way, he reunited with Lily, the girl he had saved the previous day, and he also hired her as his new assistant. However, during combat in the dungeon, Lily showed a particular interest in Bell's dagger, repeatedly asking about it. At the end of the day, Bell returned to the guild and told Aina that he had hired Lily, a girl from the Soma Familia, as his assistant. Upon hearing this, Aina told him that she didn't have a good impression of the people from that family, as they always seemed far too impulsive and completely out of control. After their conversation ended, as Bell was about to leave, Aina noticed that the dagger he usually carried on his back had disappeared. which instantly made Belle's face turn pale. Meanwhile, Lily had taken Belle's dagger to sell, but she was only offered a ridiculous sum because the weapon's power was exclusively tied to its true owner. Bad luck for her, because just as she was leaving the shop, she ran into Ryu and Seer, who immediately recognized the dagger. Ryu recovered it, and Lily, frightened, ran off until she collided with Belle. Shortly after, Ryu and Seer arrived to return the dagger to him, though they didn't reveal the whole truth, and it was Seer who simply warned Lily not to deceive anyone again. The next day, Belle continued exploring the dungeon alongside Lily. At the end of their work, they had earned quite a bit of money, and Belle decided to divide it equally, which left the girl completely surprised and astonished. Meanwhile, high atop the tower, Freya observed him, and immediately felt deeply intrigued. She took a book in her hands and murmured that she wanted to uncover the hidden power residing within Belle. Since he had recently earned quite a lot of money in the dungeon, Belle invited Hestia to dinner. She gladly accepted and went to the god's bathhouse to get ready. There, without any shame, she revealed that she had a date with a human, which immediately piqued the curiosity of several gossiping goddesses. So, when Hestia appeared before Belle looking elegant, those goddesses also burst in, forcibly pulled her aside, and began to fight over Belle. Filled with rage, Hestia grabbed his hand and fled with him. After much effort, the two managed to escape the pursuit. Although dinner was ruined, Belle and Hestia felt happy to discover, almost by chance, a beautiful place to view the scenery, just for them. At that very same moment, Lily was being assaulted by adventurers from the Soma Familia, who forcibly snatched all the money she had earned. The next day, Belle went to the tavern to return an item to Seer, and there he saw a magic book displayed on a bookshelf. Noticing his interest, Seer explained that it belonged to a customer who had forgotten it and that he could take it if he wished. Belle accepted, and once home, he opened the book and began to read it until he unknowingly fell asleep. When Hestia returned and saw him, she checked his body and, to her utter surprise, discovered that Belle had learned magic, a brand new spell called Firebolt, in addition to the type of instant magic that requires no prior incantations. Anxious to test his newfound strength, Belle immediately rushed to the dungeon and began casting fireballs until he eventually collapsed, having completely exhausted all his magical energy. Just at that moment, Ice and Riveria were returning to the surface after having defeated a powerful boss. Seeing Belle lying on the ground, Ace decided to stay and look after him as a way to compensate for what had happened with the Minotaur. A little while later, Belle woke up, and upon seeing Ace, he panicked and rolled away, fleeing. Once home, he felt regretful for having acted so clumsily. When Hestia saw him in that pitiful state, she thought it was due to the book on the table. Upon opening it, she discovered that the pages were completely blank, and she realized she held a grimoire, a book capable of granting the reader a spell suitable for them. The problem was that the grimoire lost its power after being read, so Belle could no longer return it to the tavern in good condition. However, when he showed up to apologize, Mamma Mia simply tossed the book into the trash and said it was the fault of the customer who had forgotten it there. Later, in front of the dungeon, Belle saw Lily being harassed and wanted to intervene, but he was stopped by a red-cloaked adventurer he had seen before. This adventurer even put his arm around Belle, inviting him to steal the girl's money together. Belle, of course, refused, but that entire scene was observed by Lily, who completely misinterpreted everything and decided to carry out a plan against him. As they descended deeper into the dungeon, Lily recalled her dark and painful past. All the suffering she had been forced to endure was the fault of cruel adventurers. Even when someone kind-hearted tried to offer her a helping hand, those cruel individuals wouldn't leave her alone and ended up taking everything from her. That's why, for her, the mere word adventurer was tainted with pure hatred. At that very moment, at the Loki Familia headquarters, the goddess Loki was explaining to Aina that the members of the Soma Familia didn't actually worship their god, but rather a perfect, exquisite wine. So much so that they would do absolutely anything for money, just to taste even a single drop of that exquisite drink. The next day, Lily encouraged Belle to go to the 10th floor to test his strength. Although he initially hesitated, after hearing her flattering praises, he eventually accepted. As they were about to arrive, Lily pulled out a short sword and handed it to him, saying that the black dagger he was using wasn't suitable against large monsters. Belle considered that she was right, so he put the dagger in his item box and took the sword instead. On the surface, Aina met Ice and thanked her for having saved Belle the previous time. Ice felt saddened because every time she saw Belle, he would run away, and she thought he feared her. But after hearing from Aina that Belle actually harbored good feelings towards her, Ice's face lit up with unexpected joy. At that moment, both Ice and Aina found themselves drawn to the conversation of 4 nearby adventurers who were saying that Belle was about to fall into a dangerous trap. Upon hearing this, Aina thought for a moment and then asked Ice to go and help him. On the 10th floor, Belle was confronting an enormous monster, and thanks to his recent growth, he had no trouble defeating it with ease. However, suddenly, Lily disappeared, and around Belle, objects that attracted monsters began to appear, quickly surrounding him. Immediately afterward, Lily appeared from above, snatched the dagger from him, and left without hesitation, convinced that Bell was just like the other adventurers of the Soma Familia, and that his death would hold no importance whatsoever. With the dagger forged by Hephaestus in her hand, Lily thought she could finally gather enough money to leave her family. But unexpectedly, 4 adventurers from the Soma Familia intercepted her, stole everything she had acquired, and threw her as bait to a swarm of killer ants so they could escape. On the verge of death, Lily believed this was punishment for betraying Bell's kindness, but not all hope was lost. At the very last moment, Bell appeared and launched fireballs, annihilating the creatures. Seeing the doubtful expression on the girl's face, Bell explained that when she abandoned him on the 10th floor, a very powerful adventurer arrived and saved him, though, due to the thick fog, he couldn't see who it was. Putting that aside, Lily exploded, calling Bell an idiot and asking him why he had come back to save someone who only knew how to lie, just like her. Bell calmly replied that he did it simply because he didn't want to abandon her, as he saw in Lily's loneliness the same solitude he had felt before meeting Hestia. Meanwhile, in her room, Freya was pleased with Bell's rapid progress, although she knew he was still marked by what had happened on the 5th floor. Because of this, she ordered her subordinate, Ottar, to take care of the situation. After leaving the dungeon, Bell brought Lily to his home to officially introduce her to Hestia. There, the girl swore loyalty to the goddess and promised that she would never deceive Bell again. Hestia accepted, though she warned that she would keep her under close surveillance and that she must behave without trying to improperly approach Bell. However, that warning didn't seem to have much effect, as Lily didn't hesitate to compete with her for the boy's attention. Caught between the two, Bell used the excuse of going to the guild to see Aina to escape. Upon entering, he saw Aiz talking with Aina and tried to retreat, but this time Aiz stopped him. She returned the bracelet he had lost on the 10th floor, and that's how Bell realized that it was Aiz who had saved him from that swarm. For the first time, calmly, Aiz apologized to him for letting the Minotaur escape. Bell thanked Aiz for saving him twice, both times leaving a positive mark on each of their hearts. Upon leaving, Aiz took the initiative and proposed teaching him to fight so he could become stronger. However, even though the Loki Familia's sword princess was incredibly powerful, her ability to teach wasn't the best. Therefore, she decided Bell should learn through practice, by means of training battles between them. Meanwhile, deep within the dungeon, Ottar, following Freya's orders, was training a Minotaur with the purpose of unleashing it upon Bell in the future. During the following days, Bell continued training with Aiz and ended up getting beaten again and again. Each time he fell defeated, Aiz let him rest, leaning on her lap until he recovered. Thus, the routine repeated itself like an endless cycle. During a break, Aiz noticed Bell's rapid growth and asked him why he was trying so hard. He replied that he wanted to become stronger to catch up to the girl he loved. One morning, upon learning that Aiz had single-handedly defeated the 37th floor boss, Bell felt disheartened, realizing the enormous distance that still separated them in terms of raw power. After a week of training, Bell managed to improve significantly, to the point of being able to counterattack Aiz. However, that would be their last session, as the next day, she had to join the Loki and Hephaestus Familia's expedition, whose objective was to clear the 59th floor, a place where no one had ever set foot before. High atop Babel Tower, Otter informed Freya that everything was ready, which filled her with excitement at the thought of the spectacle Bell was about to star in. At the same time, on the 9th floor of the dungeon, Bell noticed something was wrong. The strange silence of the place reminded him of the terrible experience on the 5th floor. His instinct proved correct, as the Minotaur trained by Otter immediately appeared, leaving him paralyzed with fear. Fortunately, Lily managed to save him at the last moment. Seeing Lily injured because of him, Bell forced his mind to react and began launching fireballs at the monster. However, they had no effect, and he ended up being slammed against the wall by its brutal force. With his body battered, he got up again and tried to keep fighting, though he knew deep down that if this continued, he wouldn't make it out alive. At that moment, Lily came to, and Bell forced her to flee while he drew the Minotaur's attention elsewhere. Then, attempting to use 2 weapons simultaneously, he drew another dagger, but, lacking the necessary skill, he was easily caught by the monster, which lifted him with its horns and violently slammed him to the ground. Just as Bell was about to lose his life, Aiz appeared once more before him, ready to defeat the Minotaur in his stead. However, Bell stopped her because he knew that if he couldn't stand up on his own this time, he would never be able to catch up to her. Taking a weapon from the ground, he launched himself back into combat against the Minotaur, and little by little demonstrated his superior skills, surprising the members of the Loki Familia, who couldn't believe he was still a level 1 adventurer. Freya, for her part, was more than thrilled. To break the monster's defense, Bell used Hestia's dagger to pierce its wrist, preventing it from wielding its weapon. Then, he took the greatsword that had just fallen and gravely wounded it, finally making it explode with multiple fireballs. Though exhausted of magic and strength, Bell remained standing like a true hero. Riveria approached to check his condition and discovered that all his stats had reached S rank. Upon hearing this, Aiz couldn't help but show an expression of pure joy. After having defeated the Minotaur by himself, Bell became the adventurer who ascended to level 2 the fastest in history, taking barely a month and a half to achieve it, whereas even someone as strong as Aiz had needed more than a year. That night, when Hestia checked his stats, she confirmed that Bell had acquired a new skill called Argonaut, the representation of his desire to become a hero. Afterward, Hestia told him he had to attend a gods meeting where titles for newly promoted adventurers would be chosen. Outside the meeting room, he met Tak Mikazuchi, who was also there to receive a title on behalf of his follower Makoto. Both agreed they would be the day's protagonists. Meanwhile, Bell dreamed of receiving a grand title, but Hestia returned to tell him his would be Little Rookie, which left him somewhat disappointed. Seeking to vent, he went to talk with Lily. At the tavern, Ryu and Seer, upon hearing the news, brought food to celebrate together. There, when Bell mentioned he planned to go with Lily to the 13th floor, Ryu advised him to expand his party, as from that level onward, the strength and number of monsters drastically increased. Still impressed by the quality of the armor he had acquired earlier, Bell decided to return to the Hephaestus Familia's apprentice blacksmith shop, hoping to find another piece of equipment crafted by Welf Krazo. The curious thing is that Bell didn't find the equipment he was looking for, but he did run into Welf Krazo at the shop. Upon leaving together, Welf was enthusiastic that an adventurer as famous as Bell valued his work and immediately proposed becoming his exclusive blacksmith, on the condition that Bell accepted him into his party. Soon after, already on the floor, Lily was surprised to discover that Welf carried the surname Krozo, a clan once famous for forging powerful magic artifacts, but which over time had lost that ability and fallen into decline. Before they could speak further, a group of monsters suddenly appeared. The three fought and managed to eliminate them with relative ease. While Lily collected the magic stones, Welf noticed that Bell's hand was surrounded by small flashes of light, though neither of them could explain what they meant. At that moment, a dragon appeared attacking Lily, and Bell by instinct launched a fireball. To his surprise, the simple spell made the creature explode into pieces. Upon returning home, Bell recounted what had happened to Hestia. She explained that this was the effect of his new Argonaut skill, capable of boosting a simple attack and transforming it into a decisive blow against much more powerful enemies. She also confessed that she had investigated Welf. He still possessed the ability to create magic artifacts, but he refused to craft them, which Hestia found suspicious. The next day, with Lily absent on her own business, Welf invited Bell to his home. There, he asked for permission to use the Minotaur's horn in order to forge him a new weapon. During the process, Welf confessed that he considered weapons to be true, inseparable companions for adventurers, whereas magic artifacts were fragile, broke easily, and moreover, corrupted their owners' personalities and talents, which is why he had stopped making them. Once the forging was complete, he handed Bell a red dagger and said he wished to be considered a comrade on the same level as Lily. The following day, Bell and his team ventured into the middle area of the dungeon. At first, everything went well, as they easily defeated some firehounds on the 13th floor, but the situation became complicated when they encountered a pack of axe rabbits. At that very moment, a Tak Mikazuchi Familia group was fleeing from monsters and was cornered right in the area where Bell and his companions were holding their ground. Their leader decided to use Bell's team as a sacrifice to buy time. Despite Mikoto's opposition, the clash with the monsters pursuing Tak Mikazuchi's group put Bell's party in a deadly predicament, forcing them to retreat into a narrow corridor. During the retreat, Welf was wounded in the arm by a wolf. Faced with the desperate situation, Lily concluded that the only chance of survival was to descend to the 18th floor, one of the few safe zones within the dungeon, through interconnected pits scattered in that part of the labyrinth. Outside the dungeon, the god Tak Mikazuchi brought Hyacinthos, Makoto, and the others to apologize to Hestia for what they had done. She coldly replied that if Bell didn't return, she would hate them for life, so she demanded they help her rescue her group. Quickly, a search team was formed, but a problem immediately arose. Most of the high-level adventurers from the Hephaestus Familia were on an expedition with the Loki Familia, and the Take Mikazuchi Familia only had 3 members strong enough to descend to the middle level. At that moment, Hermes declared that he would send his strongest member, Asphi, to join the mission. This surprised all the gods present, as Hestia and Hermes had almost never had dealings with each other. Furthermore, Hermes announced that he himself would accompany the rescue group, even though the rules forbade gods from entering the dungeon. Upon hearing this, Hestia also insisted on going, which placed an enormous burden on Asphi's shoulders. She would have to protect 2 deities at the same time. To further strengthen the team, Hermes invited Ryu, whose strength was unquestionable. Before departing, Hephaestus tasked Hestia with delivering an item to Welf, accompanied by a personal message. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Welf used his black magic to eliminate minor monsters, seeking to conserve Bel's energy. But when Lily's monster-repelling bag lost its effect, 4 minotaurs surrounded him and forced Bel to fight. With determination, Bel shattered one of them using his twin red and black daggers. Then he took the fallen monster's weapon and, activating Argonaut, unleashed a devastating slash that wiped out the other 3 in a single blow. Although the battle was brief, it left him exhausted after expending all his strength and magic. At that very instant, the rescue group arrived at the scene of destruction. Based on the tracks and signs, Asfi accurately deduced that Bel and his companions were not trying to ascend, but rather heading to the safe area of the 18th floor. During the journey, Hestia asked Hermes the true reason why he was so interested in saving Bel. He confessed that there were those observing his growth, and furthermore, he wanted to see if Bel was capable of leading the gods into a new era. In parallel, on the other side, both Welf and Lily fainted from exhaustion. Bel, with no other choice, left all his belongings behind and carried both companions to continue moving forward. After falling through a hole that led him to the 17th floor, Bel continued advancing with heavy steps until he saw a wall of multiple colors, a clear sign that the entrance to the 18th floor was very close. However, he had the misfortune of encountering Goliath, the 17th floor boss, just as it had revived. With no time to think, Bel could only run with all his might and speed. Finally, thanks to his effort and a bit of luck, he managed to safely bring his 2 companions to the 18th floor. Upon waking up, Bel was surprised to see that the person next to him was Aiz. After learning that Welf and Lily were safe, Bel went with Aiz to thank the Loki Familia commander, Finn. He explained that because some members had been poisoned by monsters, the Loki Familia's expedition had been forced to temporarily stop on that floor while they waited for the antidote to be brought back. That same night, when Welf and Lily woke up, Bel felt much more at ease, and the 3 of them participated in a welcome banquet organized by the Loki Familia. At the celebration, the sisters Tiona and Tioni wouldn't stop pestering Bel with questions about how he had managed to raise all his parameters to S rank, which made Aiz show a slight gesture of jealousy, while Bel could only nervously sweat. At that moment, Bel heard a familiar sound and ran to check, indeed finding Hestia. Upon seeing him, Hestia threw herself onto him, crying non-stop. The emotional scene was interrupted when Lily appeared, and then the other members of the rescue group arrived one by one. Upon seeing the Takmikazuchi Familia group, both Welf and Lily couldn't hide their anger. Later, in a tent, Makoto knelt to apologize to Bel's group, while Kashima took full responsibility, though he stated that he did not regret his decision. Hearing this, and in contrast to Lily and Welf's discontent, Bel surprised everyone by saying that he too would act like Kashima if his companions' lives were in danger. The next day, they all went together to Rivera, a city located inside the dungeon, founded by adventurers. However, the prices were so high that almost no one dared to buy anything, except for Lily, who urgently needed a bag to carry items, and Hestia, who splurged money on a bottle of perfume. In that place, Bel coincidentally ran into the adventurer who had once fought with him in the tavern. The man tried to attack him, but upon seeing Aiz's group, he got scared and immediately fled. After this, the girls decided to go bathe together, while Hermes put an arm around Bel's shoulders and seriously invited him to go with him to another place. It turned out that what Hermes wanted to do was take Bel to spy on the girls while they bathed. He even said that peeking was part of men's romanticism. Upon hearing this, Bel was shocked, as he had once heard that same nonsense from his grandfather. While trying to stop Hermes, Bel tripped and fell right into the bathing area, which caused the girls to misunderstand him, although Asfi did realize who the real culprit was. Seeing more than he should have, Bel blushed and awkwardly ran away. But fate seemed to want to keep putting him in compromising situations, as he ended up encountering Ryu, who was bathing in a nearby stream. After that, Ryu took Bel to the resting place of the members of the familia she belonged to when she was still an adventurer. All of them had fallen there after falling into a trap set by their enemies, and only Ryu managed to survive. To avenge her companions, Ryu didn't hesitate to use any means, and finally managed to exterminate the entire enemy familia, but in return, she was blacklisted by the guild. Thanks to Mia's protection, Ryu was able to rebuild her life and lead a more peaceful existence. That same night, in a tavern, an adventurer named Mort, still resentful about what had happened that morning, incited other adventurers to teach Bel a lesson. Just at that moment, someone entered and handed Mort a strange object. The next day, while Bel was spending time with Aiz and her group, Mort's men kidnapped Hestia and sent a letter to force Mort to go to the specified location. There, Mort forced him into a duel. If Mort lost, he would have to surrender all his equipment, but if Hestia won, she would be freed. The combat began with Mort using dirty tricks. He blinded Bel for an instant and thanks to an artifact became invisible, attacking from multiple angles. Unable to see his rival, Bel could barely defend himself and received blow after blow. Not far away, Hermes and Asfi observed the confrontation and revealed that the object allowing Mort to become invisible actually belonged to Hermes. He didn't hand it over with bad intentions, but so that Bel would learn about humanity's darker side. At that moment, Welf and the members of the Takemikazuchi Familia appeared to help Bel, confronting Mort's accomplices, while Lily managed to rescue Hestia by following the trail of perfume she was wearing. After receiving a harsh beating for quite some time, Bel began to trust his own instincts, dodging the invisible attacks until he managed to knock off Hades' helmet, forcing Mort to reveal himself. To prevent the situation from spiraling out of control, Hestia unleashed her divine power and commanded all present adventurers to stop. However, she didn't know that this reckless act would provoke an immediate punishment from the dungeon, the appearance of a black Goliath, an aberration created to hunt down and eliminate Hermes and herself. With that, the smaller monsters also began to turn bloodthirsty, something that had never happened before on the 18th floor. Faced with the situation, Bel decided, along with his companions, to go help those in danger, while Asfi returned to the city of Rivera to ask leader Bors to gather the adventurers under his command and organize a counterattack against the Black Goliath. At first, he refused, as he knew this creature was not a normal boss, but when he learned that the escape route had collapsed and everyone was trapped, he had no other option but to rally the adventurers' spirits and lead them into battle. A simple plan was devised. Ryu and Asfi would serve as a decoy to distract the Goliath, while the other adventurers would attack to buy time for the mages, who needed to concentrate on preparing their combined spell. Thanks to everyone's combined effort, the 5 mages spell was successfully completed and severely damaged the monster's body, making it stagger. However, when everyone thought victory was assured, the Goliath displayed the terrifying ability to regenerate, nullifying all previous work. Faced with such despair, Bel concentrated the power of his Argonaut skill and launched a gigantic fireball that blew off half of the monster's head. Even so, the impact wasn't enough, and Bel was about to be crushed until Aiz appeared just in time to save him. Although both were gravely wounded by the shockwave, while Bel lay on the ground, he remained conscious and could hear Hestia and Lily's shouts of encouragement, but his body wouldn't respond. It was then that Hermes appeared, who repeated a phrase his grandfather used to tell him. With those words, Bel found the motivation to get up and surpass his limits. Reanimated, he took a great sword from Lily's hands and, with the music of battle resonating within him, he headed back to the front lines. Sensing the imminent danger, the Black Goliath went berserk and charged at him, but it was stopped by the combined effort of the other adventurers. Asfi activated an artifact on her feet to burn the Goliath's eyes, which allowed Ryu to cast her most powerful wind spell. Makoto maintained him with a divine barrier, and finally, Welf accepted to leave his pride behind and use the best magical weapon he had created. Thanks to everyone's sacrifice and effort, Bel, wrapped in his desire to become a hero, advanced with firm steps, swung his sword, and struck a blow that pierced the monster before destroying its magic stone with the beast's knife. Goliath exploded into 1,000 pieces under the deafening cheers of all the adventurers celebrating the birth of a new hero. From above, Hermes couldn't contain his excitement witnessing the scene, and also revealed that Bel was actually the grandson of Zeus, the last hero descendant of that legendary lineage. Following the events of the previous season, since they defeated the Black Goliath on floor 18, Bel's strength and that of his 2 companions increased significantly. Added to their frequent collaboration with Makoto, their group could now survive without problems in the intermediate levels of the dungeon. That night, while the 3 celebrated that Welf had become a master blacksmith and that Bel was about to level up to level 3, Luan from the Apollo family started insulting them. Worse still, he dared to call Hestia an undignified goddess, which Bel and Welf couldn't tolerate. Bel immediately forced Luan to apologize, while Welf threw a beer mug at his face. The fight broke out quickly and Bel's group knocked down almost everyone from the Apollo family until their leader, Gaikitos, appeared and brutally defeated them. If it hadn't been for Beth's casual presence at that moment, Bel could have lost his life. Upon returning home, Estea confessed that she was glad Bel had gotten angry over her but demanded that he not do it again. However, upon learning that those men belonged to the Apollo family, her face showed a look of disgust and concern. The next day, while Bel was at the guild, 2 girls named Daphne and Cassandra arrived to deliver an invitation to a banquet that the god Apollo wanted to host for Hestia. Upon reading the letter, Hestia understood that this gathering wasn't simple and decided to invite the gods Takemikazuchi and Miak to accompany her. At the banquet, noticing that Bel and Ice were maintaining a distance due to their goddess conflicts, Hermes gave Bel the perfect opportunity to invite Ice to dance, while asking Asfi not to mock this Iloki, even knowing that it might bring him trouble later. Since it was Bel's first time dancing, he was very nervous. But thanks to Takumi Kasuchi's timely advice, he managed to gain the confidence needed to enjoy the dance with Ais. While observing the scene from the side, Freya couldn't help but show them. At that moment, the lights in the room went out, and Apollo accused Bel of having savagely beaten Luan the night before, using that excuse to challenge Hestia to a war game. He declared that if he won, he would take Bel as a prize to satisfy his twisted whims. In response, Hestia immediately rejected that absurd challenge and left the banquet, although it was clear that Apollo didn't intend to let things stay that way. The next morning, before Bel headed to the dungeon, Hestia explained to him that the war game was a total battle between two families, where the winner could seize everything the defeated family possessed. Just as he was leaving through the door, Bel was surprised by a group from the Apollo family who attacked him with all their force. Seeing him, he carried Astea and broke the siege, but soon found himself facing Daphne and Cassandra. Reuniting with Bel, the two girls advised him to accept his fate, as they too had been victims of something similar and understood Apollo's obsession when he desired something. Of course, Bel couldn't accept such madness and quickly escaped after throwing a fireball at the enemies. The bold actions of the Apollo family soon spread throughout the city. Upon hearing this, Welf and Lily rushed to check the situation, while Finn warned Ice not to intervene in that battle. Meanwhile, Bel faced Gaikitos again, and like the previous time, he was brutally beaten. Unlike Daphne and Cassandra, Gaikitos worshipped the god Apollo blindly, feeling annoyed seeing Apollo showing interest in Bel and wanting to completely destroy him. Fortunately, members of the Mayak and Takuma Kasuchi families, followed by Welf and Lily, arrived one after another to support Bel and Hestia's retreat. However, during the escape, Sanis, the leader of the Soma family, intervened unexpectedly and forced Lily to return with him. Later, while Bel and Hestia hid under a bridge, Hestia confessed her feelings to Bel and said she was willing to leave the city with him, but Bel only responded that he respected her greatly, which caused Hestia to lose control and scream, revealing her hiding place. After this, not wanting to continue fleeing uselessly, Hestia decided to accept Apollo's challenge and participate in a war game, whose rules would be set by the gods. Upon exiting, they discovered that Lily had been forced to return to the Soma family. Bel wanted to immediately go rescue her, but Hestia stopped him and told him that others would save Lily, while what Bel needed to do was maximize his own abilities. Understanding Hestia's words, Bel went to the Loki family to ask Ice to train him as before, and this time, he also got Tiona's help. That same night, when Shanis brought Lily before the god Soma, she expressed her straightforward wish to leave the family. But Soma paid her no attention, occupied solely with making his wine. Later, in the cell, Xanis revealed to Lily that the real reason he forced her to return was to exploit her rare transformation magic to make money. The next day, Hestia's group discovered that Lily was being held and began planning her rescue, while Bel continued training intensely with Ice and Thyona. On the day of the gods' assembly, Apollo and Hestia faced each other at the negotiation table to decide the setup of the war game. According to the agreement, if Apollo won, Bel would belong to him. If Hestia won, she could claim whatever she desired. To ensure impartiality, Apollo proposed that the combat format be decided by chance, and Hermes would draw it, as both sides trusted him. Despite Hestia's high hopes for him, Hermes drew the worst possible option, an assault battle, a type of confrontation where the number of members was decisive. To partially compensate for his mistake, Hermes suggested allowing Hestia's side to receive some external help. At first, Apollo firmly opposed it, but after being ridiculed by Freya, he ended up accepting that Hestia could recruit an ally outside the city families. Hearing Apollo's condition, the present gods couldn't help but label him as miserly. That night, while Hestia's group launched an incursion to rescue Lily, inside the cell, the young girl was unexpectedly freed by the jailer, who was tired of Sanis. Amidst the confusion, Lily begged the Hestia group to withdraw to avoid risking anything, but Hestia assured her that Bel needed her and deeply cared for her. Moved by those words, Lily ran to beg the god Soma to stop the battle. With the same indifference as always, Soma handed her a cup of his divine liquor and said that if, after drinking it, she could repeat her plea, then he would listen. Although she knew how difficult it would be, Lily drank the cup in one go and immediately became dizzy, as if dragged by a current. However, she managed to gather her strength, repeated her plea in tears, and managed to move Soma, who finally ordered the battle to stop. Shortly after, seeing how Sanis was defeated by Welf, the god Soma allowed Lily to leave her family and officially join Hestia's family. The next day, Welf and Makoto asked their respective gods for permission to also move to Hestia's house, while Hermes managed to convince Ryu to join as support in the war game. During this time, Bel continued to push himself to the limit in his training. During one session, Aiz taught a crucial lesson. The enemy usually lowers their guard when launching a final attack, and that is the perfect moment to turn the situation around. On the eve of the war game, Bell returned to reunite with his comrades and headed towards the battlefield, carrying a lucky charm that Aina had given him. On the other hand, the Apollo family remained confident in their victory, despite Cassandra's prophecy of defeat, which foresaw Luan fleeing into the fortress. The next day, with the permission of the god presiding over the guild, Hermes used his divine power to allow the entire city to easily follow the war game. At the start of the siege battle, Ryu appeared in front of the enemy, wielding 2 magical artifacts from the Crosso family and repeatedly used them to attack the walls. Almost immediately, Luan transmitted the order of Hyacinto to send half of the forces inside the fortress to stop Ryu. Taking advantage of this distraction, Makoto quickly infiltrated and retained a large group of soldiers with his divine martial arts technique. Suddenly, Luan opened the fortress gates, allowing Bell and Welf to enter, which enraged Apollo. No one expected that it was actually Lily, who had used her transformation magic to impersonate Luan, while the real one was locked somewhere by the god Myak. Upon learning that Bell and Welf had entered, Daphne ordered her mages to attack them, but Welf returned all their spells with black magic, giving Bell the opportunity to break the defenses. Then, with his Argonaut skill combined with a fireball, he penetrated the roof and reduced the hall where Hyacinthos was located to rubble. Through the smoke and dust, Bell quickly approached and easily defeated him, but just afterward, Cassandra appeared suddenly and held him, giving Hyacinthos time to concentrate an attack that left Bell seriously injured. Still, at the moment Gykitos launched his final strike, Bell remembered what Ice had taught him. He found an opening and delivered a devastating punch, ending the confrontation. Meanwhile, in the gods' meeting, Hestia exercised her right as the victor and declared the confiscation of all Apollo's properties, as well as his expulsion from the city forever. A few days later, when everyone moved into the mansion that had belonged to Apollo, Hestia decided to add a Bell image to the emblem of her flame family in honor of Bell's great deeds. Inside the residence, Hestia organized a small party to celebrate that Bell had ascended to level 3, and the other members unanimously agreed to name him the leader of the family. Additionally, Hestia announced with joy that the architect god Goibnu's family had finished remodeling the mansion according to her requests. Not only did they completely remove the formidable presence of the Apollo family, but they added a hot spring bath as Makoto wished, and a fully equipped blacksmith shop for Welf to work freely. Due to the victory in the war game, the reputation of the Hestia family skyrocketed. Therefore, when Hestia began recruiting new members, many adventurers, both from within and outside the city, presented their applications. However, the celebration was overshadowed when, during the selection process, she accidentally discovered a debt of 200 million valleys owed by Hestia, causing the crowd to disperse immediately, and even the current members to become worried and confused. Later, when Bell learned that Hestia had taken such a large debt to commission the Black Dagger for him, he was truly shocked to think that she had used 200 million valleys just to kill monsters. The idea hit him so hard that he couldn't bear it and collapsed. By the afternoon, when the other 3 members mentioned the possibility of going to the dungeon more frequently and doing missions to earn money and pay the debt, Hestia declared that those 200 million valleys were a personal debt, and she herself would be responsible for settling it. However, after overhearing the words Bell said to Welf in the public bathroom, Este already understood the true meaning of a family and accepted the help of others to pay the debt. Just then, the doorbell rang. Makoto went to answer and found Shigusa. After a brief conversation, Makoto showed great agitation and said she wanted to go to bed early. Perceiving Makoto's strange behavior, the remaining 3 followed her secretly and discovered, to their surprise, that the place she and Shigusa were heading to was the Red District. At that moment, seeing how 2 girls were harassed by street customers, Welf and Lily immediately jumped to help them, not realizing that Bell had been detained by a courtesan and quickly dragged into the crowd. The reason Makoto and Shigusa had gone to the Red District was because they had received news that a childhood friend of both worked there. Although it seemed incredible, given that her friend came from a noble family, they decided to verify it to be sure. It was then that Welf noticed Bell's absence, which put everyone on alert. Meanwhile, Bell wandered the streets looking for an exit until he stumbled upon Hermes by chance. Seeing him in the Red District, Hermes thought Bell had gone there to have fun like him, and gave him an energy potion before leaving calmly. Upon reacting, Bell chased after him to return the bottle, but ended up colliding with a woman named Aisha. Recognizing him as the novice who had recently become famous, Aisha, along with her companions, took him to a mansion. It was then that Bell realized he had fallen into the main base of the powerful Aisha family. There, in a room, the women eagerly wanted to entertain him, until suddenly, Frayne, the leader of the Ichtar family, interrupted the situation. Taking advantage of the confusion in their discussion, Belle managed to escape and was eventually pursued to a room where a fox girl named Haruhime was staying. After clearing some unnecessary misunderstandings, Haruhime told Belle that she would help him escape there at dawn, on the condition that he stayed talking to her until then. According to Haruhime, she came from a distant land to the east, but after a conflict with her father, she was rejected by her family. After going through many difficulties, she ended up being tricked and sold to the Unstar family, becoming a courtesan. As both shared a liking for hero stories, their entire conversation revolved around that topic. Haruhime confessed that she had always dreamed of a hero taking her hand and leading her to a beautiful world. However, after becoming a courtesan, she thought she no longer had the right to dream of such things. Later, when Belle was let out of the Red District, he kept thinking about Haruhime's words and the image of the hero he wanted to become. In another scene, Hermes gave the goddess Isekai a secret object she planned to use against Freya. Discovering that Freya seemed interested in Belle, Istar decided she must take him away at any cost. After returning home from that night in the Red District, Belle was punished by Hestia, who forced him to perform community service for the neighbors. Fortunately, the other members arrived soon to help him. During the conversation, they discovered that the childhood friend Makoto was looking for was, in fact, the same fox girl who had helped Belle the night before. Noticing Belle's eagerness to rescue Haruhime, Lily advised him to give up, as this could trigger a war game between the two families. Meanwhile, at the tavern, Hermes asked Mia to pass a message to Freya, warning that Ainshar had set his eyes on Belle. Sir, who passed by there, heard and harshly reproached Hermes, believing he was the one who led Belle to the Red District. Shortly after, Belle went to the guild to seek more information, and Aina explained that the Ainshar family was one of the most powerful in terms of strength and wealth, with many level 3 or higher Amazon warriors, plus a captain called Frayne, who had reached level 5. Not only that, Ain added that there were rumors that the members of the Istar family were much stronger than they declared to the guild, so she advised Abel not to get involved with them. That night, Makoto secretly returned to the Red District to meet Haruhime, but she, embarrassed by her status as a courtesan, firmly denied ever having met her before. Returning with sadness, Makoto told Belle about the deep bond between Haruhime and the members of the Takemikazuchi family, which deeply moved Belle and led him to decide that, together with Makoto, he would rescue Haruhime. By chance, Belle and Makoto met Hermes, the expert in the Red District, who advised them they could gather money to buy Haruhime's freedom. However, upon learning that Haruhime was a fox girl, Hermes' face changed immediately, and he said mysteriously that the object he had previously given to Istar was actually an extermination stone. At the same time, the goddess Istar ordered her family members to capture Belle, while expressing her expectation for the extermination stone ritual that would take place at the next full moon. The next day, in the dungeon, while the Beast family members were busy fighting monsters, Aisha received instructions from a mysterious individual and quickly launched an attack on Belle. Surprisingly, despite both being at level 3, he demonstrated overwhelming strength against which Belle couldn't resist. Even when Makoto came to help, they easily defeated both. At that moment, the hooded person watching showed surprise seeing Belle and Makoto on the ground, as it was actually Haruhime. Hoping to be the first to entertain Belle, Frayne hid him to keep him against the orders of the goddess Akstar, which forced the other members of the family to split up to search for him. Taking advantage of the situation, Haruhime brought the key to the cell to Makoto, and then ran to where Belle was detained, freeing him quickly when Frayne went out to fetch medicine. Following a secret passage to the outside, Belle thanked Haruhime for saving him. However, Belle was deeply concerned for Haruhime's safety, though she quickly reassured him that no one else would ever dare to harm her. Afterwards, Belle enthusiastically shared the grand plan they all had to rescue her and purchase her freedom, which filled Haruhime with such immense happiness, realizing that so many people still genuinely cared for her. Meanwhile, back at the Hestia family mansion, everyone was earnestly discussing the sudden capture of Belle and Makoto, utterly baffled as to why the Ishtar family had acted in such a manner. It was then, upon hearing Belle's name and the mention of the extermination stone, that the god Takemikazuchi's face immediately transformed, completely losing all his usual composure and calm. It turned out that the extermination stone was a truly forbidden magical artifact, specifically designed to seal away the souls of foxes and, in doing so, exploit their immense spiritual power. As even a tiny fragment of this stone contained such immense power, it was typically divided into several pieces for use, meaning the fox's soul could never, ever truly recover. Furthermore, Takemikazuchi explained that the extermination stone ritual could only be performed on the night of a full moon, which, coincidentally, was precisely that very night. At the same time, Makoto, while hiding in a room, accidentally stumbled upon crucial information regarding the extermination stone. Because of this, as soon as she managed to escape, she went to find Haruhime to ask if she knew anything about it. Haruhime did not respond, remaining completely silent as she was already fully aware of the tragic and terrible fate that awaited her. At that very moment, Frayne suddenly appeared, snatching Haruhime away and revealing that the Ishtar family desperately needed Haruhime's special level-up magic to prepare for an all-out decisive battle against the Freya family. Bell felt absolutely furious upon hearing this, but when Frayne provoked him to try and rescue her, he didn't dare, fearing it would endanger the Hestia family. Deep down, she wished Bell had the courage to save her, but his indecision ultimately left her feeling deeply disappointed. Soon after, another group from the Ishtar family arrived, relentlessly pursuing them. Makoto had to drag Bell, who was still in a state of shock, to flee. Hiding in a dark alley, Bell reproached himself bitterly for not having acted as memories of Haruhime flooded his mind again and again. Especially that one phrase that for a hero, a courtesan was the very harbinger of doom. Thinking about it made him fully understand that this was not the ideal path he wanted to follow. A true hero never ever abandons anyone. That's why Bell decided he would rescue Haruhime at any and all costs. If things went wrong, everyone could simply abandon the city together and only return when they were strong enough. Quickly, they meticulously devised a plan. Makoto would be responsible for freeing Haruhime while Bell caused a massive diversion and chaos, and in the event that Makoto failed, both of them would then attempt to destroy the extermination stone to prevent the sacrificial ritual from ever taking place. Activating the power of Argonaut, Bell burst into the Ishtar mansion through the main entrance, unleashing powerful fireballs against the guards who dared to stand in his way. Hearing the commotion, Frayne ordered a warrior named Zamira to take the Foxwoman to the execution tower, while other members rushed out to pursue him. Facing Frayne, Bell had absolutely no chance, and he was soon completely surrounded. At that very instant, the goddess Ishtar herself appeared and ordered her subordinates back to the tower so she could speak with Bell alone. When Bell questioned her about Haruhime, she confessed that she needed Haruhime's power to level up all the members of her family, and thus gain enough strength to seize everything that the goddess Freya possessed, because Ishtar felt a deep, burning envy for Freya, as she was always considered the most beautiful goddess, and not her. Having said that, Ishtar ordered her subordinates to subdue Bell and then attempted to seduce him with her divine power. However, surprisingly, Bell managed to resist, which left Ishtar utterly bewildered. It turned out that his rare ability, Lyris Freeze, allowed him to maintain his sanity. Taking advantage of a momentary lapse by Ishtar's minions, Bell managed to escape, running quickly towards the outside. At the same time, Makoto successfully defeated the two guards escorting Haruhime, but Haruhime refused to flee as she didn't want Bell or Makoto to risk their precious lives just to save a mere courtesan. At that very instant, Makoto was suddenly thrown from a bridge by a member of the Ishtar family. Fortunately, she managed to grab onto a chain and successfully climbed back up. Just as Samira was about to plunge the sword with the extermination stone into Haruhime, Makoto made the crucial decision to use a self-sacrificing technique that took down a large number of the enemies. This gave Bell the perfect opportunity to lunge forward and destroy the extermination stone, finally putting an end to the sacrificial ritual. Although the stone had been utterly destroyed, Haruhime still refused to escape with Bell, convinced that a courtesan did not deserve to be rescued by a true hero. But Bell responded that a true hero never ever abandons anyone, and he asked her to reflect deeply on what she truly desired. Tired of hearing such nonsense, Frayne immediately attacked. Faced with this, Haruhime used her support magic to boost Bell's level, desperately begging him to free her from that filthy, wretched place. Haruhime's blessing greatly strengthened Bell, though it still wasn't quite enough to even think about defeating a level 5 warrior like Frayne. Meanwhile, Freya had brought the members of her family to completely raise the Red Light District in a blaze of destructive flames. After learning that Ishtar had dared to touch Bell, during all that chaos, Otar also took it upon himself to heal Makoto's wounds before the Hestia group managed to find her. Back in the battle at the Hanging Tower, Bell continued to be utterly dominated by Frayne due to the significant difference in their levels. However, when he heard Frayne insult Haruhime, he became absolutely enraged and hurled her towards the lower floor. By sheer coincidence, she landed directly in front of Otar and was instantly and completely crushed. On the upper level, as Bell tried to approach Haruhime, Aisha appeared to intervene, stating that she wanted to test if Bell possessed sufficient determination to truly protect her. To ensure a fair and honorable fight, Bell patiently waited for the effect of Haruhime's magic to completely disappear before confronting Aisha. Both were at level 3, so the fight seemed evenly matched, but after clashing with all their might, the outcome was decisively determined when Bell's powerful fireball exploded directly into Aisha's abdomen. At the same time, the god Hermes observed with immense satisfaction how his intricate plans had helped Bell draw closer to the ideal hero that the world so desperately needed, and he couldn't help but acknowledge it. He himself admitted that he never, ever imagined Freya's love for Bell could be so incredibly profound. Despite her desperate attempts to escape, Ishtar could not flee from Freya's grasp. With a single, powerful slap, Freya sent her back to the heavens, where she could never again reappear in the lower world. Dawn brought a brand new day, and Bell, with his own hands, broke the slave collar that Haruhime wore, happily reuniting with the Hestia family. Sometime later, the god Ares led the stellar army of the Rakia kingdom in a massive, full-scale attack against the city of Orario, although it was quickly and decisively repelled by the adventurers of the Loki family. In the midst of that chaotic situation, Aisha bid farewell to Haruhime to march to the battlefield and continue with her profession. She was about to reveal that Haruhime still preserved her virginity, but in the end, she decided it wasn't necessary, as that detail no longer affected the relationship between Belle and the Foxwoman in any way. Later, at mealtime, the god Hermes summoned Belle to speak to him about the 3 great world quests related to defeating 3 legendary monsters that had escaped from the dungeon. As he explained, the first 2 objectives, the King of the Earth Bahamut and the Lord of the Seas Leviathan, had already been vanquished in the past by the 2 most powerful families of that era, Hera and Zeus. But when they confronted the 3rd monster, the one-eyed dragon known as the Black Dragon, those 2 powerful families were completely annihilated, leaving behind an unfinished mission, patiently waiting for a true hero to complete it. On one occasion, seeing Belle holding Haruhime's hand while they were doing household chores together, Hestia decreed that within her family, men and women could not flirt with each other, although, as a goddess herself, she was completely exempt from that particular rule. Lily did not accept such an injustice and protested vehemently, so Hestia ended up eliminating that absurd rule, and immediately afterwards she ran to ask Belle what he would do if a goddess were to confess her love to him. Belle responded with complete sincerity that he would reject her because he thought he was not worthy of such a profound feeling. That answer deeply wounded Hestia, who ran crying outside. Meanwhile, at the Rakia army camp, the god Ares decided to head to Orario to kidnap a god as a hostage, despite his advisor, Marius, trying to stop that utterly absurd idea. However, in an incredible and astonishing way, upon arriving in front of the city gates, Ares managed to capture Hestia and take her with him, leaving Marius completely bewildered and utterly confused. A little later, as Belle was walking through the city, he encountered Ice and learned of Hestia's kidnapping. When the group was discussing how to proceed with the search, Hermes suddenly appeared and told them to leave the matter in Asphy's capable hands. Thanks to her exceptional tracking skills, Belle and Ice managed to catch up with Ares' entourage. However, in the process, Hestia accidentally fell down a precipice, forcing both Belle and Ice to immediately leap after her. Upon awakening, Hestia discovered that she was in a simple, humble room, with Belle right by her side, diligently caring for her. He explained to her that Aias had rescued both of them, and that, at that moment, she had gone out to investigate if there were any Ares troops in the surrounding area. At that instant, the village chief appeared along with his adopted daughter, Rita, to inquire about Hestia's health, and at the same time offer her their home, as if it were her very own. The next day, as a token of profound gratitude towards the villagers, Belle helped them prepare for the harvest festival that was to be celebrated that very night. During the preparations, Belle discovered that the local people revered 10 scales from the Black Dragon, which had protected them from monsters for many, many years. Back at the house, Belle conversed with the village chief and learned that he too had once been an adventurer, just like himself. Furthermore, the chief confessed that he had shared a very special bond with his goddess, until she, in saving him, was tragically forced to return to the heavens. The village chief did not want Belle to live his entire life with deep regrets like he did, so he sincerely advised him to take very good care of his goddess. Later that night, as the 3 shared moments with the villagers at the festival, Rita came running to inform them that her father was extremely weak. In his final moments, Calm confessed that upon seeing Hestia, memories of the goddess Brigid came flooding back to him. Hearing this, Hestia took the chief's hand and pretended to be the goddess Brigid, helping him to depart in peace. Contemplating the night sky, Belle asked Hestia if, upon going to heaven, the chief would be able to reunite with his goddess. Hestia responded that it was extremely difficult, as when someone dies, their soul returns to a pure state, devoid of memories, until the moment of reincarnation. Even so, Hestia assured Belle that every time he died and was reborn, she would search for him again to bring him into her family so that they could always, always be together. The next day, the 3 bid their farewells in front of the village chief's grave and began their journey back to Orario to reunite with their beloved ones. Continuing with the events of Season 2, on the 19th floor of the dungeon, a monster girl was being relentlessly pursued by a group of adventurers when, by chance, she encountered Belle. By pure instinct, Belle was about to attack her, but upon seeing the little one crying, he felt immense pity and helped her escape from those men. Back on the 18th floor, the group discovered that the girl accompanying them was actually a monster, and they immediately tried to kill her. However, thanks to Belle's persistent insistence and the fact that the small creature began to speak, the others reluctantly agreed to let Belle take her with him. At the same time, a mysterious man named Fels was informing Uranus, the guild's guardian god, about the existence of an intelligent monster that was about to emerge from the dungeon. Already at the mansion, seeing how utterly defenseless the girl was, Hestia allowed her to stay temporarily and named her Weenie. Even so, Hestia knew that this was no minor matter, so she asked everyone to consult their friendly gods about the case of a monster capable of speaking. Unfortunately, they didn't get any useful answers, except that Wealth overheard rumors in the guild about a monster on the intermediate levels that was using adventurers' equipment to fight. Meanwhile, Vina was beginning to truly enjoy her new life on the surface. She felt immensely happy bathing under the warm sunlight or savoring the delicious dishes that Haruhime lovingly prepared for her. Although a small incident occurred later that greatly frightened Vini, Belle managed to calm her with a gentle smile, reassuring her that everything was perfectly fine. That night, to prevent what happened in the afternoon from recurring, Welf made Vina some brand new claws, which filled her with absolute joy. Even so, doubts about the girl's presence lingered deep within everyone. Before sleeping, Vina confessed to Belle that she used to dream of killing many people and then being killed herself, afterwards remaining in a cold, lonely darkness. Elsewhere, Hermes and the members of his family were discussing a mission that Uranus had entrusted to them to investigate the smuggling of monsters that were being taken out of the dungeon by the Ichlos family. Meanwhile, Dix, the captain of the Ichlos family, was reprimanding his subordinates for having let a rare monster like Vina escape. Then he ordered them to investigate the adventurers who were on the 19th floor at that time, and he asked the god Achelos for more detailed information about the entire matter. The next day, desiring to know more about Vina, Hestia decided that the group should secretly return to the 19th floor to investigate, but since it was necessary to leave 2 people protecting the family, only Belle, Welf, and Lily participated in this dangerous expedition. Seeing that the team was somewhat weak, Belle asked Ryu for help, but she initially refused. However, with the sudden appearance of Ryu, she changed her mind, thinking that she should help her friend Seer through Belle. During the battles in the dungeon, both Ryu and Belle demonstrated their incredible strength, while Belle seemed to be having emotional problems, utterly unable to kill monsters ever since he had met Weenie. In the city of Rivera, on the 18th floor, Lily was in charge of watching over the girls, while Belle and Welf descended to the 19th floor to investigate. At the very spot where Belle had first found Weena, both were disappointed not to find any clues, when suddenly a young girl appeared who told them they carried the scent of their own kind. As she perceived no smell of blood, the young woman murmured a few words about the peaceful coexistence between humans and monsters, and then immediately departed. Upon picking up a fallen feather from that girl, Belle and Welf understood with utter astonishment that she too was a talking monster. Shortly after, upon crossing paths with the Ichlos family, Belle caught the attention of Dix, their captain, who knew from his subordinates that Belle had been present when they were pursuing Vini. Back on the surface, Belle was reflecting in solitude about that mysterious girl when he was intercepted by the god Ichlos himself. He even mentioned Vini, which left Belle feeling deeply uneasy and quite disturbed. Luckily, Hermes appeared just in time to get him out of that predicament. Sitting down to converse, Hermes directly interrogated Ichlos about whether his family was trafficking monsters and if they were part of the dark organization called Avilas. Ichlos denied everything, and he responded that Hermes could use the guild guard members who were roaming nearby to investigate him as much as he wanted. Meanwhile, at the Hestia family mansion, Vina was playing hide-and-seek with Haruhim when she overheard Lily say that her continued presence there would put everyone in grave danger. Deeply moved, Vina ran out to find Belle. As she wandered through the city, she saved a child, but the citizens misunderstood her actions and began to stone her. Belle tried to run towards her, but Lily arrived first and dragged Vina away from there, preventing the Hestia family from becoming embroiled in serious trouble. In the crypt beneath the church, Vina could only embrace Belle and cry inconsolably, causing great sadness in everyone present. The sudden appearance of a monster in the middle of the city had unleashed a wave of harsh criticism against the guild. Faced with that dire situation, the guildmaster surprised everyone by ordering Aina to transmit a secret mission to the Hestia family. Aina was utterly astonished, as it was a mission that could not be refused and was normally only assigned to powerful, high-ranking families. She couldn't understand why, on this particular occasion, they had chosen the Hestia family. Upon opening the envelope, Belle was left completely perplexed to discover that the mission consisted of escorting the dragon girl Vini all the way to the 20th floor of the dungeon. Although it wasn't clear how the guild knew of Vina's existence, the only thing the Hestia family had to do now was find a way to reach the 20th floor, a place they had never, ever reached before. This made Belle feel incredibly guilty for having dragged his entire family into such immense danger. However, everyone showed their unwavering willingness to accompany him and face the difficulties together. That night, after bidding farewell to the group entering the dungeon, Hestia followed the instructions written in sacred runes within the letter, which led her to meet Fels, who then guided her before the god Uranus. Meanwhile, deep inside the dungeon, thanks to the powerful artifact that Welf had meticulously prepared beforehand, the group finally managed to reach the designated point. There, Vina heard a song emanating from behind some rocks, so Welf broke through the wall and they discovered a hidden cavern. As soon as they entered, the team was suddenly attacked by a group of strange and heavily armed monsters. In the midst of the dangerous situation, everyone protected Vina with all their might, while Belle concentrated the power of Argonaut and hurled the leader lizard against the wall with a powerful punch. Suddenly, the lizard began to laugh, leaving everyone utterly bewildered and confused. Immediately, a female monster named Ray appeared, who introduced herself as the same one Belle and Welf had seen the previous day, and explained that all of that had only been a test to see if they truly, genuinely cared for Vini. It turned out that all the monsters in that place, just like Vini, had received intelligence to reason. They were not simple beasts, guided solely by the instinct to kill. Afterwards, the lizard introduced himself by the name of Lid and extended his hand to greet Belle. Although his sharp claws were quite intimidating, Belle gathered his courage and shook his hand, causing the entire cavern to erupt in thunderous cheers. At the same time, Uranus explained to Hestia that he called all these intelligent monsters Xenos, and that he was diligently protecting them. He also expressed his earnest wish that Hestia and her family could become the crucial bridge that would bring humans and Xenos closer to a peaceful coexistence. Back in their cavern, the Xenos monsters organized a grand, elaborate banquet to warmly welcome their very first human guests. However, there was still a small dissenting group of monsters, led by Gruss, who strongly opposed placing their trust in any humans. Even so, Lid adamantly insisted that Bel's group was quite unlike the adventurers they had encountered previously. On the other hand, Hestia considered the very notion of humans and monsters living together in harmony to be far too outlandish and utterly preposterous. But the god Uranus convinced her that the Xenos were entirely different, so much so that they were even attacked by their own kind because of their advanced intelligence. All they truly desired was a peaceful existence under the sun, and the ability to communicate with humans through spoken words, not through violence and senseless slaughter. Upon hearing this, Hestia felt a deep sense of compassion for the Xenos' plight, though she also greatly feared that if it were ever discovered that her family had any ties to monsters, the Hestia Familia would undoubtedly lose its esteemed place within the city of Orario. At that very moment, Fels was acting in his crucial role as an intermediary between Uranus and the Xenos, while Lid enthusiastically introduced Bel's group. Before transforming into the skeletal being he was now, Fels had been a highly renowned and celebrated sage, widely remembered for successfully creating the powerful magic of immortality. Simultaneously, when Hestia inquired why the Xenos had come into existence, Uranus speculated that monsters, too, possessed a cycle of reincarnation much like humans. He theorized that after countless lifetimes, their accumulated desires and deep regrets transformed their very souls, ultimately granting them their own unique and distinct intelligence. Before bidding farewell, Lid sternly warned Bel that he absolutely must not hold back when confronting the dungeon monsters, as they were entirely different from the Xenos. He emphasized that if Bel hesitated in battle, he would undoubtedly put his own life at grave risk. Vina wept inconsolably upon learning that she had to be separated from Bel, but Lid gently explained that it was not yet the right time for the Xenos to live on the surface world. From that point onward, the Xenos began to divide themselves into various groups to relocate to their new, designated settlement. Unfortunately, Vina's group fell into a cunning trap laid by the enemy and was forced to fight against members of the Isekai Familia. Despite their valiant resistance, they simply could not stand against the overwhelming power of a level 5 adventurer like Dix, and they were utterly defeated. Not only was there a brutal slaughter, but among the Isekai members, there were 3 depraved individuals who attempted to defile the bodies of some Xenos women. To protect her honor, she bravely threw poison into their faces, and then tragically ended her own life. Simultaneously, Fels was remarking to Uranus that he suspected the existence of yet another hidden access point to the dungeon when he discovered that the crystal serving as a vital link to the Xenos had suddenly ceased responding. The reason was that upon witnessing the brutal massacre of his comrades, Gross erupted in an uncontrollable fury, utterly destroying the crystal and swearing a solemn oath to exact his revenge upon all humans. Lid attempted to stop Gross, but he failed and was forced to follow him to closely monitor the unfolding situation. Ever since coming into contact with the Xenos, Bel had begun to feel increasingly uncomfortable with the necessity of killing monsters. That's why, when he encountered Ias outside the dungeon, he earnestly asked her what she would do if she knew that monsters also possessed genuine feelings. Ias coldly replied that if anyone had to shed tears because of a monster, she would not hesitate for a single moment to mercilessly kill it. At that very moment, the guild suddenly announced a strict prohibition, forbidding all adventurers in the city from entering the dungeon, as the city of Revira, located on the 18th floor, had been completely overrun and taken over by a formidable group of armed monsters. The god Uranus decided to entrust this critical matter to the Ganesha Familia, and furthermore, he specifically requested Fels to bring Bel along with them to ascertain whether he was truly a trustworthy hero, or quite simply just another pawn in the grand schemes of the gods. Following this, each faction within the city reacted in a distinctly different manner to the rebellion. The Loki Familia displayed a certain degree of displeasure at having to concede the suppression mission to the Ganesha Familia. The god Akalos, on the other hand, appeared quite enthusiastic about what his subordinate Dix was currently accomplishing. The god Hermes, deeply concerned that Bel was becoming increasingly entangled in perilous troubles, ordered Asphi and her companions to secretly enter the dungeon to protect him. To everyone's utter surprise, he then extended an invitation to Ryu to join their clandestine mission, driven both by her profound concern for Bel and by the strong suspicion that the Isekai Familia was deeply connected with the dark faction of Ilis. Ryu accepted the proposal without any hesitation whatsoever. The very next day, Bel discreetly infiltrated the Ganesha Familia's entourage to prepare himself for entering the dungeon. Meanwhile, in Revira, Gross successfully captured one of the 3 depraved individuals from earlier, thanks to the lingering scent of spider venom that still permeated him, thus uncovering the precise whereabouts of the Isekai Familia. However, en route to that location, Lid and Gross's group unexpectedly encountered the Ganesha Familia's entourage, which inevitably forced both sides into a direct confrontation. Asphi had initially planned to merely observe the situation, but upon seeing that the Ganesha Familia was beginning to be at a distinct disadvantage, Ryu and Aisha simply could not restrain themselves and immediately entered the fray, joining the combat. Bel, amidst the utter chaos, led Lid to a secluded spot, and there he learned the true, underlying reason for the rebellion. Because of this, he wished to join the Xenos to rescue Vini, but Lid firmly refused, knowing full well that if anyone were to see Bel fighting alongside a group of monsters, his life as an adventurer in Orario would be irrevocably ruined forever. At that very instant, Ryu suddenly appeared, and Lid hastily retreated. Afterward, Ryu informed Bel that it seemed the dark faction, Evilis, was deeply involved in this entire affair, and therefore she wanted him to return to the surface to avoid further complications. However, Bel adamantly refused and resolutely decided to continue pursuing the Lid. Seeing that she simply could not convince him, Ryu handed him a small pouch filled with various items and sternly warned him to use them only when absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, Dix ordered his subordinates to open the entrance to bring Lid and Rainey's group into the secluded confinement area, which would officially mark the beginning of their hunt. On the path following Lid, Belle encountered Fells. One of the items from Ryu's pouch, a magical eye, allowed them to uncover a secret, hidden construction marked with the name of a city street, Daedalus. Fells then deduced that this was the clandestine route the Eclos Familia used to secretly smuggle the Xenos out of the dungeon. Finally, Dix and Gross arrived at the location where their comrades were imprisoned, but they noticed that Vina was conspicuously absent from the group. At that very moment, Dix appeared with his men, fully prepared to take action, although he was somewhat surprised by the unexpected presence of both Belle and Fells. When Fells inquired how the Iclos Familia had managed to discover that particular location, Dix proudly revealed that he was a direct descendant of Daedalus, the legendary architect who originally constructed the entire city of Orario. According to him, his ancestor, besides being a widely recognized genius, had also been a madman utterly obsessed with the dungeon and with the ambitious dream of creating a construction that would surpass it entirely. Thus, the artificial labyrinth, Knossos, was born, which was precisely where everyone found themselves at that very moment. To prolong his grand ambition far beyond his own death, Daedalus imposed a binding blood pact that compelled his descendants to continue building within Knossos for over 1,000 years. The Iclos Familia's illicit smuggling of monsters served precisely to fund this seemingly endless and monumental undertaking. Afterward, Dix unleashed a potent curse that caused widespread confusion and utter madness among the Xenos. Fells explained to Belle that the only way to break this curse was by defeating its caster, especially when facing a formidable level 5 adventurer like Dix. Belle had absolutely no confidence in himself, but for Vina and the other Xenos, he had no other choice but to bravely fight. Simultaneously, a rabbit-type Xenos was guiding a Minotaur towards the 18th floor of the dungeon. As expected, even though the curse significantly weakened Dix, Belle was still no match for him. During their intense combat, Dix confessed to Belle that the blood pact within him compelled him to complete Daedalus's work, even if he himself did not truly desire it. Even killing monsters provided him with absolutely no relief whatsoever. Only by listening to the desperate pleading screams of the Xenos did he manage to feel a true sense of satisfaction. On the 18th floor, the Ganesha Familia's entourage was suddenly attacked by an extremely powerful and formidable Minotaur. Almost everyone, including both Aisha and Asfi, was defeated in the blink of an eye. Even Ryu fell shortly thereafter. The strange thing was that the creature did not finish off any of them, leaving them alive. Meanwhile, in Knossos, upon seeing that Belle was treating the Xenos as if they were actual humans, Dix cruelly extracted the blood-soaked stone embedded in Vina's forehead, right in front of Belle, forcing her to reveal her true monstrous form and to descend into utter madness. In that deranged state, Vina did not recognize Belle at all and attacked him relentlessly, again and again, which filled Dix with immense satisfaction. However, even though he received grievous wounds all over his body, Belle continued to advance with unwavering resolve until he stood directly in front of Vini, gently reminding her of all the precious moments they had shared together. This caused the young girl to burst into heart-wrenching tears and clutch her head in agonizing pain. This unexpected turn of events utterly enraged Dix, who lunged forward to attack Belle. But this time, after skillfully severing Dix's weapon, Belle clearly and unequivocally stated that if anyone ever needed help, he would always extend his hand, regardless of whether they were human or monster. Belle's powerful words not only further enraged Dix, who immediately attempted to kill him, but they also managed to help the Xenos regain a measure of their sanity. Then, by joining forces with Lid to launch a combined attack on Dix, Belle found the perfect opportunity to unleash the full power of Argonaut and slammed him against the wall with a single devastating punch. Dix's true intention was to force himself to dispel the curse and thereby regain the full, formidable strength of a level 5 adventurer, thus avoiding being gravely injured after the powerful impact. When he rose, Dix cunningly used the blood-soaked stone to distract both Belle and Lid, and at that precise moment, he cast an illusion spell upon Vini, compelling her to head towards a tunnel that connected directly to the surface. After receiving immediate healing from Fells, Belle promptly set out to pursue her. Lid and Rainey resolutely decided to accompany him, even though they fully understood just how perilous the situation would be. When Weenie suddenly appeared in the Daedalus district, Hestia's group also happened to be present there. Haruhime was on the verge of being struck by Weena's sharp claws, but Belle arrived just in the nick of time to bravely stop her. Suddenly, a spear hurled from a considerable distance pierced through Ween and impaled her against the wall, placing Belle in an extremely complicated and dire situation. Even so, he resolutely decided to stand directly in front of her to shield and protect her. Meanwhile, back in Knossos, Dix had the extreme misfortune of encountering the incredibly powerful Minotaur from earlier, and he was utterly defeated in a mere matter of seconds. Back on Daedalus Street, Belle argued that Weena was his personal prey to prevent others from attacking her, but absolutely no one believed that absurd and ridiculous excuse. Finn immediately ordered the Loki Familia to hunt her down, although the sudden arrival of the Xenos momentarily halted the advancing adventurers. However, the fragile truce did not last for long. Bite and Tione easily defeated both Lid and Rainey, and even Fells' secret weapon was effortlessly cut in two by Tiona, leaving even the immortal sage utterly astonished. Elsewhere, Gareth, another formidable member of the Loki Familia, managed to successfully capture the god Ichlos for intense interrogation. At that very instant, the colossal Minotaur emerged from the tunnel and with a single powerful blow, knocked down both Beat and Tione. Upon seeing him, Lid uttered his name, Asterius, the strongest of all the Xenos. He not only possessed overwhelming physical power, but also wielded an imposing magical weapon, which utterly paralyzed the Loki Familia and compelled Ice to personally intervene in the battle. Immediately upon the commencement of their fierce combat, Ice tore off one of Asterius' arms. But what was truly astonishing was that, with his remaining arm, he managed to fight on equal footing, even launching counterattacks and inflicting wounds upon her. Furthermore, the intense pressure of exchanging blows at extreme speed for such an extended period caused Ice's hands to begin trembling uncontrollably. Witnessing this, Gareth and Finn immediately rushed forward to support her, but Asterius and the other Xenos managed to make their escape thanks to the dense cloud of smoke bombs skillfully deployed by Lulun, a member of the Hermes Familia. At that moment, Belle was closely following Vini while using fire spheres to prevent the adventurers along the path from attacking her. However, upon entering an arena, many adventurers struck her with powerful electric magic, and then one of Dix's bald subordinates hurled a spear directly into her chest. The very ground of the Colosseum suddenly collapsed. Belle once again placed the blood-soaked stone onto Vini's forehead, but the young girl began to slowly fade away right before his very eyes. Happy memories flashed fleetingly through his mind, causing Belle to suffer even more profoundly, until, in his moment of greatest despair, the wise Fells suddenly appeared and activated a forbidden spell that inverted life and death. This created a brilliant blue light that soared into the sky and transformed into a swirling vortex of pure energy, miraculously returning Vini to Belle, safe and sound, which filled him with overwhelming joy and profound happiness. The expulsion of the god Akalos from the city allowed the incidents involving monsters on the surface to gradually decrease. However, the Xenos group remained trapped within the Daedalus district, being relentlessly pursued by the formidable Loki Familia. Furthermore, after the recent events, Belle became the primary target of widespread criticism, as people accused him of allowing his selfishness and his desperate need to stand out to put everyone in grave danger and cause severe damage to the city. Even so, Belle did not regret having saved Vina in the slightest. At that very moment, the god Hermes unexpectedly appeared. With the crucial assistance of the Hestia Familia, he planned to return the trapped Xenos back into the dungeon. Upon hearing this, Hestia suggested telling Loki directly, but Hermes flatly refused because he knew that Finn would never, ever accept it. As they walked through the streets of Daedalus alongside Hestia, Belle was harshly insulted by the citizens, forcing Hestia to use the excuse of his debt to defend him, which made Belle feel incredibly sad and disheartened. Even though the entire city had turned its back on him, Seer continued to worry about him, just as she always had. After patiently listening to all the doubts and worries that Belle held deep within his heart, Seer told him that perhaps at that very moment, he might have lost many things, but what was truly important would always remain right by his side. Furthermore, the Loki Familia seriously intensified their relentless pursuit, making it only a matter of time before they successfully captured the Xenos. In the midst of this escalating tension, Hermes produced Daedalus's notebook, which contained the intricate blueprints of Knossos, to present them to the god Uranus. Simultaneously, the gods Hephaestus, Mayak, and Takamikazuchi also decided to actively participate in the elaborate plan to return the Xenos to the dungeon. After receiving a coded letter from Fells, the Hestia Familia group, diligently following the precise instructions, obtained a large quantity of magical tools from him. Welf had also successfully forged 4 brand new special magical weapons specifically for the mission. According to Daedalus's final memoirs, Knossos held a total of 6 entrances and exits, but up until that point, the Loki Familia had only established defenses at 4 of them, which clearly meant that 2 access points still remained undiscovered. Even so, Hestia's group and the Xenos did not know precisely which 4 entrances were being guarded. Therefore, to effectively divert the Loki Familia's attention, Fells suggested using Belle, the most famous and recognizable person at that very moment, as a strategic decoy. On the other side, Finn also shrewdly deduced this very strategy, so he decided to significantly reinforce the defenses at those entrances where Belle would not appear. Furthermore, he specifically emphasized to the others that they absolutely must kill Asterius at all costs. Although she suspected that Belle was merely a decoy, to be absolutely certain, she sent Ice to follow him closely. First, it was Naza of the Mayak Familia, then Ryu and Aisha, and finally, Aina, who approached Belle one after another, which made Ice seriously suspect that he was secretly plotting something. Meanwhile, Welf and Makoto encountered the Xenos group. Lid leaped up and let out a resounding cry to gather his scattered kin, and afterward, the entire entourage departed together. High atop Babel Tower, the goddess Freya also commanded Otar to initiate their planned action. According to the agreed-upon plan, Lily used her transformation magic to sow utter chaos within the Loki Familia's defenses. Naza, for her part, utilized an illusion item to help Belle contain the adventurers who were pursuing him, but Ice could still sense his precise location, which meant Ryu had to step out and directly challenge her to buy precious time. Simultaneously, Lily successfully located one of the Loki Familia's defensive bases, and by transforming herself into a spy, she managed to cleverly extract the locations of the remaining 3. With that crucial information, Hestia ordered Welf to guide the Xenos towards the secure western gate. Even so, the Loki Familia reacted much faster than anticipated, as Gareth immediately appeared to block the entire entourage. Fortunately, thanks to 2 powerful ice magic weapons skillfully crafted by Welf, the Xenos group managed to overcome that formidable obstacle, although no one noticed that Vina had become separated from them. Upon realizing this, Haruhim immediately rushed towards the young girl. When informed, Belle also reacted with the same urgency. Meanwhile, Vina found herself in an extremely perilous situation, facing Tiona all by herself. Thanks to her small body, Vina managed to squeeze into a sewer, although Tiona relentlessly pursued her. However, upon witnessing how the young girl risked her own life to save a child from danger right in the middle of the street, Tiona made the compassionate decision to let her escape. Shortly thereafter, Vina joyfully reunited with Belle and the Foxwoman, feeling incredibly happy. But it wasn't long before Bet tracked their scent and arrived at the location. Fortunately, Ryu appeared just in time, bravely received the frontal attack and lunged at Beat to stop him, thereby giving Belle the crucial opportunity to lead Vina to the designated rendezvous point. Sadly, after running just a few steps, Belle and Vina unexpectedly encountered Ice. Belle had no other choice but to bravely fight against her to protect the young girl. However, the power difference between them was far too immense, and Belle was mercilessly beaten. Fortunately, in the midst of his utter desperation, he managed to ingeniously devise a plan. He used a fireball to collapse a section of the bridge, effectively slowing Ice down, which allowed him to escape with Vini. Afterward, Bel enclosed the young girl in the passageway he had previously used to hide Hestia, and he earnestly asked the goddess to guide her towards another exit. Just a few minutes later, Ice reached the location and relentlessly pressured him with a series of fierce attacks to force him to move aside, but Bel remained absolutely firm in his resolute decision to resist. Inside the passageway, Weena tearfully confessed to Hestia that she desperately wished to return to save Bel, regardless of any potential consequences. Then, right in front of Ice, the small girl, with her own hands, tore off her claws and her wings, as undeniable proof that she no longer wished to harm any humans. Deeply impacted by her unwavering determination, Ice admitted that she could no longer bring herself to raise her sword against Veen. Afterwards, she handed Bel a potent healing potion and instructed him to take Veena away. Following Hestia's precise instructions, Bel swiftly led Weena until she was reunited with the other lost Xenos, and together with them, he ventured deep into the labyrinth of Knossos, using Asterius' key. Before they parted ways, Veena and Bel intertwined their fingers, promising each other that someday they would live together peacefully under the same roof. Everything seemed to have finally come to an end, but then, quite suddenly, Hestia accidentally dropped Daedalus' notebook into a puddle of water and, to her astonishment, discovered a hidden secret. Before handing it over to the god Uranus, Hermes had cunningly altered the blueprints, deliberately leading the Xenos into a dead end, thereby forcing them to sacrifice some of their own members solely to restore Bel's tarnished reputation. With no other viable alternative, Gross and 3 other Xenos bravely charged into the central plaza to attack Ina, following Hermes' calculated orders. As expected, Bel immediately appeared to stop them. Confused by Gross's attitude, he only heard from him that he must die by his hands. But the instant Gross lunged, seeking his own death, Bel remembered his grandfather's words, who had taught him not to bend to the will of others, and put away his weapon, forcing Gross to stop. Just as Hermes had foreseen this reaction, he ordered Asphi to drive Gross mad, but before she could do so, Asteris suddenly burst in and delivered a brutal blow that sent Bel flying through several houses. Face to face, Asteris confessed that in his previous life, he had been the Minotaur trained by Otar, and that he died at Bel's hands on the 9th floor of the dungeon. Because of that, he asked for a rematch, and Bel accepted. Unlike their first encounter, Asterios' power was such that he could fight on equal terms with Ice, so it was no surprise that Bel was completely overwhelmed. Furthermore, the fact that both could freely confront each other at that moment was due to the members of the Loki family having been contained by the Freya family, and even Otar personally intervened to hold back Finn. From above, the god Hermes admitted his failure in charting a predetermined path for Bel, and at the same time, he reflected that perhaps those who dare to defy the will of the gods are the ones who can shine with the greatest strength. Bel's combative and courageous spirit, little by little, made the city's inhabitants forget what had happened before and begin to acclaim him with cheers. Afterwards, when the red knife in his hand shattered, Bel unexpectedly received a weapon from Otar and once again launched himself into combat against Asterius. They fought from night until dawn, moving all the way to the gates of the Tower of Babel. Seeing that it was time to conclude, Bel and Asterius unleashed their most powerful attacks simultaneously. After the devastating clash, Bel was completely defeated, being caught and slammed into the ground. Nevertheless, Asterius declared that the score between them was a draw and promised that, in their next encounter, they would put an end to everything. A while later, upon the ramparts, Bel was reflecting on his defeat when Ice approached him, leaving what had happened behind. Bel asked him to continue training him as he yearned to become much stronger. And that's all for today's story. If you want to keep learning about Bel's story, let me know in the comments.